Welcome to the show. I am joined today by Sydney Ross. Sydney, welcome.
Hey,
Sydney, it's always great having you on the show. At this point, you're a regular guest of MMA Fancast, and it's always great to have you on. You have a ton of experience. I guess we'll start with this. You're still 21 years old. I mean, you would know that, but I had to check it. Tapology. You're 21 years old, but you've already had 9 amateur MMA fights. With a record of 5-4, ton of experience. What's it like having so much experience still this young into your MMA career?
I just like to stay active. I don't really like I enjoy fighting, so I like to do it frequently. And I'm pretty good at cutting weight and maintaining a weight where I can, take kind of more shorter notice fights. So some people, they just take longer time between fights to, they think the process more out. And we just took the route of, okay, we'll fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. Only time that fights didn't work out for me was because of promotions, not people.
I think that's a great mindset to have, particularly early in your career. You want the experience. You've obviously had a lot of wins. Some of those losses that I looked up were split decision losses. Just thinking back on those split decision losses, and not particularly, but just in general, what's it like to know that you did enough, at least in one judge's eyes, to win? Just as a fighter, is that a little bit of a moral victory that you can say, well, you've got a couple losses, but at least some of them are split decision. You did enough to win. You also did enough that other people thought you lost. But what's it like having some split decision losses?
Honestly, here at this ammy level, the advice I keep getting is don't even worry about the wins and losses. Better just doing it for the experience. Use it as learning. And it's true, you kind of ride that euphoric high after a win and maybe feel like I don't have as much to work on. But when you're going back to the drawing board after a loss, you're really forced to dissect deep into what you're doing. And honestly, the leaps and bounds come after each loss. So I guess I'm grateful for them, even though it's one of the worst feelings in the world, obviously. But sorry, my dog just walked in.
Dogs are always welcome on the show. There you go. What's her name?
Coco.
Hi, Coco. Welcome to MMA Fancast. You might be a returning guest, Sydney, but she's a brand new guest to the show. So there we go. Well, the advice you got at the amateur level, I think, is spot on with the fact that amateur is really about skill development. So in that note, what do you think has been, almost 10 fights into your amateur career? What do you think's been the thing that you've learned or developed the most? And what has been kind of the highlight so far? I guess that's a double question.
As far as actual MMA training, like I only had, I think, I want to say 5-ish months training in that when I took my debut fight. I wrestled, boxed, done jiu-jitsu here and there, but actually like November of 2017 is actually when I started training MMA. So obviously I've learned how to do the sport 5 months. I had an impressive debut, but I've obviously grown a lot in every aspect of MMA since then. I didn't really have any weaknesses, but I didn't really have any strengths coming in. I kind of was a blank slate, but I had the basics kind of down. So since then, I've kind of grown into the fighter I am, the style that works best for me. Just kind of, developing the type of fighter I am, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I think that's something that fighters, particularly in the amateur level, need to embrace, that when you start fighting and you haven't had a fight, you don't quite know yet the style of fighter you'll be. Even people that think there'll be one style of fighter over another, they have to get in there and actually see if it works, you know? And it's refreshing because I've talked to you both after wins and after losses. And like you said, you learn a lot both ways, you know, from a win, hopefully there's some things there that have started to go, you know, that development is going up and you can see what's going well. I remember after your incredible liver kick stoppage, that's my highlight, but that's not yours. What would be your highlight of your career so far? And it doesn't even have to be in the cage. It could just be something that you think was sort of a experience that you liked or something that you've learned so far in your journey.
It's definitely a fight. So back in 2019, December 2019, I fought Tia Jablonski for Cowboy Cerrone's
series. Yeah.
Series, yeah, Cowboy series. I was fighting Tia for this fight, and I just remember absolutely being exhausted and just knowing at the end, like before the decision was even made, I said, I absolutely know 100% without a doubt. I did absolutely everything. And no matter which way this goes, like I gave her hell. Like that was the demon showed up to that fight. And I ended up I got the win in that. Excuse me, sorry. But, you know, that was just a really hard fight, and I just was able to pull that out of myself. And I think that's what being a fighter and trying to get on that path to see, okay, am I ready to go pro? Experiences like that are really what it's all about. And I have a picture of it on my Instagram. I'm like holding the cage and I'm like, like gasping for air. And it was just, I captioned it, never easy, but always worth it, because you know, that was a hard mountain to climb, but honestly, getting the win after having put that much energy out, like literally giving it everything and knowing like, okay, yeah, I did secure enough for this decision. Cause I've only won 2 times by decision. All my other wins, are by stoppage, I believe. I only 2 of the, 6 times that I've gone to decision have I won that decision. So, you know, it was a pretty good feeling, you know, actually having, after sprinkled some of those losses in there, going to decision. That was probably my highlight.
That's a very insightful answer of why that's your highlight. Because to me, as an announcer, you winning by that liver kick, I mean, that was exciting. That was dramatic. As you point out, from a fighter's perspective, to go hard, to, you know, you retired, to go to a full decision. And like you had said, you were confident with your performance. You were happy with your performance, even if it ended up being a loss, because you had done all that you could do. And I could see that being an important, like you said, mountain to climb as a fighter, to know that you did all that you could do. And then it was enough in the decision side of things, which is great. You mentioned a little bit ago, you mentioned kind of on your way towards pro, it's important to have those experiences. What other experiences are you kind of holding on to as you develop towards pro?
Well, I very, you know, even in these losses, I'm not getting finished. Like, I'm not backing down when the going gets tough. I've gotten in there with some really talented, you know, Jasmine Judovicus is in the UFC now, and I fought her, you know, a couple years ago. We made that to the decision. You know what I mean? She's out here absolutely murdering people, and she's UFC caliber now. And you know, I stood in there and I fought that whole fight. There was a point in that fight where she had me belly down. So this, you know, peak, one of the highest level wrestlers, like you guys will see when she gets a couple UFC fights in.
Okay.
When she grabs a hold of you, it's a whole nother story. Like I think she's doing 115 in the UFC.
Okay.
Watch out. Like, do not let her get a hold of you. But, you know, I was belly down. She was hitting me. And I was just able to keep scrambling, you know, throwing up arm bars, doing what I could do. to stay in that fight. And that's something that a lot of people, they say, you know, I don't back down, I don't give up, but I've gone in there and proved that. I feel to myself through all these ammy fights that and taking these hard fights, I feel battle tested, for a lack of a better term.
Well, and given what you just talked about, Jasmine, and her last name is a fun one, right? Jazdavicus or something like something.
Judavicus.
Okay, Judas Vickers. I will just call her Jasmine. That is really impressive. I just looked her up. You know, she's 32 years old. She just made it into the UFC. She's a 6-1 pro record. And also, you were her last amateur fight before she went pro. And like you were saying, feeling battle tested, I think, is a really important thing. You were, what, 19 when you were fighting her, or something like that?
18.
You were 18 when you were fighting her. And so the fact that all of your losses have been by decision, and one of them being against somebody at her caliber, who's a decade and more older than you, and obviously at the peak, you know, going into her 6-1 pro career so far, I think that really does go towards your mindset. You know, I know we've talked about mindset before, how you have to combine the skills and you also have to put them into action that day. You know, so what do you think has been developing in your mindset? You mentioned, do you go through before a fight? Do you go through your battle testing to remind yourself that you hung in there with a lady who's now in the UFC and that you got in a really bad spot and still battled through? Do you do some of that mental prep before a fight?
It's all about focus. So pretty much you just cancel out all the other noise, anybody else who's there, anything else going on, anything that could be a distraction, not worrying about, you just take that day and you don't worry about Instagram, you don't worry about anything else going on, and you just focused on the fight, what you're supposed to do, and you just try to get into that state of mind where you're just like tunnel vision. So that's what I'm doing. So that's kind of like, I don't need to hype myself up and remind myself, because I just already know. I don't need to, calm that fear and be like, no, you're going to be fine. Like, remember you do this. Like, you agreed to do this. You signed that contract. You're going in there and you're giving it 100%. You're showing up. You pulled your corner and your coaches, and you got your family up, and you're bringing them here. You're putting on a show. So, you know what I mean? Fight of the night. Full time.
Yeah.
It's about the focus, because, like I said, this is what I committed to doing. I'm not here to half-ass it. Just, staying focused, get that tunnel vision, and just do what needs to be done. You put the work in through the camp. I put the work in through the years that I've committed to the sport, and just through the dedication to every aspect that needs to be attended to, the recovery, the nutrition. Just, I do the best that I can in every aspect, the strength and conditioning, the training, sparring. I'm always just trying to get better. I'm humble knowing that I'm not at the peak yet, but I'm doing my best every day to try to get closer there. So, whatever happens is part of my journey, and I just know it's not over yet. I got a long time to go. I'm having a good time on this ride. Like,
I appreciate the answer about focus, just getting in that mindset, having that tunnel vision. That's a big part of your growth as a fighter. You mentioned training, sparring, lifting, nutrition, all that. I always want to remind anybody who may not know that you train at the Gorilla House gym, and that's always such a big part of your training experience. How's training for October 23rd, Brawlenberg 9247 Fighting Championships? How's that lead up going now that we're, I guess, just under a month out?
It's going great. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. It's always, that one coming off a loss, you got that chip on your shoulder. You're ready you got even more fire under you to bring it back even harder. And the setback is for the greater comeback. So I do plan on bringing another fight of the night, another big performance, especially here for my 10th fight. Double digit.
Yes, double digit fight. I'll make sure I mention that on the broadcast. That is exciting. It's really a long amateur career to go double digits. And I think you've shown a great way to use an amateur career to develop your skills going after some of the best opponents. And as we just discussed, some of those opponents have already shown that they are very good, and you're going to be there, and you're in the development, which is just incredible to see. And it's been fun. You are coming off that fight of the night. I mean, that was a super exciting fight. It ended up being a decision loss, as we discussed. You've only ever lost by decision. But what were the takeaways from that fight, good or bad? Obviously it was a very competitive fight. Fight of the night means something to you. I can tell that it's important that you put on a great show.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people come to fight to watch. They want to fight. They want to watch a fight. And I mean, that's what the sport's about. So I pretty much, go in there and it's full send. It's action. And the people I fight also, the girl I'm about to fight now, fast paced, you know what I mean? Like, brings the fight. We're not here to put on any boring fight, you know what I mean? And I'm sorry, I forgot that other question.
That was perfect. No, that was great. I appreciate the response about putting on the fight of the night. Like you said, you want to be entertaining. You want to bring the pressure, which you do. You make your opponent have either a tough fight that they lose or a tough fight that they win. But either way, it's a tough fight for them. I think that's important, right? There's no easy wins or losses for your opponent because you really put it on them. But you're a very entertaining fighter to watch, which is obviously great for us. And it's also great that you like putting on such entertaining fights. What's a moment in that fight? Because it was a back and forth, very entertaining, that stands out in your mind that was fun for you, or that you just felt dialed in and aggressive, and somewhere in those 9 minutes there was a lot of action, a lot of different positions, but was there 10 20 seconds now that you're like, yeah, that was really good, or a scramble, or just something that stands out to you? Because I know there's a lot going on.
That last fight, so the first round, it was pretty much autopilot, I want to say. Like, the first round for real was a blur, and I felt great, thought it was a pretty good round. I was so stiff holding on the ground, though. I was real stiff, and honestly my mind was blank, so we weren't focused, but it wasn't necessarily distracted either. And then getting up, coming out, that's kind of when the scenario hit me, and that's when I became distracted and just wasn't really all the way in there. And that's the biggest thing I learned from that, is just you always got to be on it, head in the game. Like I said earlier, like, focused. That has to be above anything else, because somebody who doesn't train doesn't work as hard as you, isn't as talented as you, can easily beat you if you're having an off day, just because your mindset isn't there. And to absolutely just bust my ass in the gym, and then to win or lose, just to leave the cage knowing that I didn't put the best I could out there, like, pretty much like it was a shit fight for me. I'm not even gonna watch that fight ever, because that's not me. And the dang thing still won performance of the most exciting fight of the night. Like, not even half of what I can do. And even though, I mean, you guys appreciated the fight, but that, for me, that was a letdown. And I'm gonna bring so much more. And same thing, like, regardless of what happens in there, like, I'm start to finish, it's just going to be it's going to be the demon this time. We're not going to have, you know what I mean? I'm going to be November 2020.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. The November 2020 fighter. I think that's
You already, the demon told me. She said, I'll be there.
it's so wonderful that you're so honest on this. And it makes sense that there's some fights that you know that wasn't the type of fighter you wanted to be in there. Yeah.
Like, even though not a lot of people talk about it, I feel like a lot of people go through it and they really beat themselves up about it. But I feel like it's completely normal. And I feel like everyone, honestly, even if they win the fight, they were like, oh, I wasn't all the way in there that one. I feel like everybody who their ammy record at some point, unless they were extremely experienced and had other, you know, like I've talked to this about this with like Cameron before. He doesn't really get this ever in his amateur fighting because he had already experienced it as a kid with wrestling.
Sure. Yeah.
So I feel like it's completely normal, and I'm glad I'm dealing with it and getting out of the way in my amateur career instead of trying to, as a professional, that's definitely something you should have down pat, I feel. So I'm ready to rebound from this, and just, this is my last piece right here. When I get this puzzle fixed up in another fight or two, then I'll be good to go pro. But I'm in no rush just because of, I feel like I have another 10 years till I hit my prime. So.
And that does answer the question I was going to get to about how do you see pro sort of planning out. But that was a great answer that you just gave without me even asking it. So thanks for making my job super easy.
And no, I feel like it's one of those things, like when you're getting married, you're just like, I know it's the time. I know they're the one. You know what I mean?
Well, it will be a feel for you. Like you said, if you get the focus figured out and kind of being dialed in, which makes perfect sense. There's a lot going on. You have to, in sort of psychology of athletics, they call it the flow state, right? Where your body, like you said, you're more relaxed, but also strong, but not, like you mentioned, being stiff. But it's your mind, but also your body. It's that flow state. So makes perfect sense that you want to make sure that you have that in the next couple of fights. And then once you get that piece figured out and working, then from there, it'll be exciting to see you transition to the pro ranks. Just throwing it out there, in whatever number of fights it takes you to feel good and ready to go at pro. Since you train, I know you train around pros, and obviously you know what pro entails. What are you looking forward technique-wise? I'm thinking, is it the head kicks? Is it the elbows to the face on the ground? Like, what technique are you looking to use that you can't use until you make it to the pros?
My style, I pretty much get to use what I like. I'm excited to start using the elbows because I do like to dirty box in that close range, especially with someone who's taller and longer than me, which occasionally happens. I think I even think my opponent, I think she might be like 5'7", or like, which is like an inch or two taller, like whatever. But like Tia Jablonski, like I mentioned earlier, she was almost 6 feet tall.
No way.
125, almost 6 feet tall.
Did you use the dirty boxing without the elbows then? Did you do a lot of holding the back of the neck, pulling her down?
It was Virginia. Yeah, I got to use
everything. It was Virginia. So you were able to do full. So you've already used pro rules. For people that may not know, Virginia is an interesting commonwealth because their amateur rules are pro rules. They don't really have amateur rules. It's a lot to handle. And
3 minutes. The only difference is like the round still shortened 3-minute rounds. Okay. So that's the only difference really between their amateur and pro.
Because I knew that they allowed head kicks and elbows and ground and pound and all that. So that makes sense. Well, that's actually a good experience then, that you've already used the elbows. For people that don't watch a lot of Muay Thai and just a lot of MMA, I still think, there's been a couple exceptions, but I still think elbows will still have a ways to come in MMA. I think there's going to be maybe fighters like you or other fighters in MMA that really show what elbows can do. There's been a couple people to use them, but I think that's still a weapon on the feet and on the ground that can be used more. So it's really exciting stuff. Well, as always, it is just thrilling to watch you fight. I can't wait to see the Blonde Demon back in action October 23rd at Brawl in the Berg 9 Monroeville Convention Center, which at this point you've fought in a few times. So that's exciting that it's kind of more of a comfortable environment for you. So really just looking forward to seeing you back in action. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Can't wait to see you bring the Blonde Demon back on the 23rd.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Take care.
Thanks.